Heather, I hear my dad's voice from the basement. I'll be up in a second. I scurry up the steps and leave a competitive game of Mom Madness with my sisters. I enter the living room and see my dad with a very somber look on his face. He tells me 5 words. Mom passed away last night. No, I shout as I collapse to the floor. Trembles creep up my body. Salty tears stream down my face. My dad meets me on the ground and hugs me tightly as I dig my fingernails into the carpet. Having my mother taken away from me was devastating. It compounded the loss that I felt, being ripped away from my birth mother and birth country of Korea, stripped away of the language and culture, and human trapped against my own will at 4 months old. My first life in Korea was erased, as well as my birth name, Mi Young. I was always aware of my outsider status, pin straight, jet black hair, almond-shaped brown eyes, and tan complexion compared with my white family and white neighborhood in Long Island. Growing up as a transracial adoptee was lonely and painful. Without the tools to process grief on the loss of my mother, I decided to stuff it in. This was my survival mechanism to get through the wake, funeral, and burial. I remember standing in the funeral home in a sea of white faces. My mom's friends and relatives all came up to me and said the same thing. I'm sorry. That made me furious. I thought to myself, why are you sorry? You didn't kill my mom. Multiple sclerosis did. And sorry isn't going to bring her back. As a 10-year-old, I didn't know how to fully process grief. So I turned to what I knew best, writing. I took out my diary for the first time. It had been tucked underneath my mattress for a month. It was a gift from my aunt who brought me to my mom's corpse at the wake. It had a built-in lock and a hardcover with a rabbit under a moon and stars against the sky. I started channeling my grief and pain, how I felt when my father first shared the news that changed my life forever, seeing my mom's corpse and watching her casket enter a deep hole in the ground. I felt safe and seen in my journal. It understood me. Later that week, it mysteriously vanished. This made me feel empty and unsafe. The unspoken grief caused tension and tightness in my head, throat, heart, and stomach. I zipped up my grief for the next 6 years. I didn't know how to process it without my pen and paper. At that time, I didn't even know that what I was experiencing was even grief. According to the American Psychological Association, grief is defined as the anguish experienced after a significant loss, usually the death of a beloved person. I wasn't aware of this term and that the complex emotions I experienced included 5 stages of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. These stages were coined by the late Swiss-American psychiatrist, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969. The 6th stage, meaning, was added by grief expert David Kessler following the unexpected death of his 21-year-old son. Even though I wasn't familiar with these stages, I moved through each one. I entered the accepting stage when I was 16 during my junior year of high school as I started preparing my college applications. All of them required a personal statement. My essay was born from an assignment for my AP Language and Composition class where I revisited the loss of my mother. This was the first time I communicated grief since my childhood journal. The writing flowed naturally from my head to my heart and through my fingertips onto the piece of paper. It felt liberating to release grief that I kept locked inside my body for so long. I felt more at ease and at peace as I realized that my mom didn't want me to be consumed by grief. Releasing it did not mean I was releasing her. She will always love me, and I will always love her. 6 years later, I started to investigate the 6-stage meeting when I was 22. By that time, I already completed 1 year of therapy. In my quest to learn more about my mom's life, I decided to write a profile piece about her for my creative journalism class at Baruch College. In my research, interviews with relatives, and reading my mom's own writing, I learned that she was the middle child of 9. At age 12, she was placed in a foster home. This especially resonated with me as an adoptee. I learned that my parents adopted me because my mom was unable to naturally conceive. But I was most intrigued by this piece of information as a journalism major. When my parents picked me up from the airport, my mom's leg was propped up in the cast that she borrowed from her cousin. If she had disclosed her multiple sclerosis to the adoption agency, I don't think that she would have been able to adopt me. She wouldn't have been my mom. I don't resent her for any of her choices or her limited time on earth. Grief is universal and guaranteed. It is part of the human experience. My entire 4 decades is an entire dissertation on grief. While you might not have experienced what I did, I'm sure you experienced some type of form of grief. The grief journey looks different for all of us. There isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Aside from carrying our own grief, we are also affected by our parents' unhealed grief. We can heal generational grief by identifying the root cause of the trauma and accepting it. For those of you who are parents or thinking about becoming parents in the future, please be mindful that grief might negatively impact your relationship with your kids if you don't take the time to move through it in healthy ways. We must heal ourselves and become cycle breakers. So let's be brave and bold together as we navigate grief in these 5 steps. Number 1, communicate with yourself. Grief sucks. It comes in various forms. Give yourself permission to grieve. Instead of ignoring the pain, name and acknowledge it. Carve out time to process that grief through writing in a journal. Let your words flow freely. Number 2, communicate outside yourself. After you process the grief internally, start communicating that outside yourself. Find a therapist or grief support group to gain the tools you need to process that grief and release it from your mind. Don't rely on your friends and your family to be your therapist. Number 3, build a community. Be vulnerable and share your experiences of grief with your family and friends. You are not alone. Create a space to listen to their stories of grief. When we share, we heal together as a collective. This is extremely powerful. Number 4, release grief physically. The first 3 steps that I shared with all of you require heavy mental work, but we can't forget about the physical body. According to Dr. Mary Bouquet, author of Break the Cycle, A Guide to Healing Intergenerational Trauma, in Eastern cultures, it is understood that grief is captured in the lungs, in the heart chakra. We must release grief from our body. If we don't, it has the ability to manifest into physical ailments. We don't want that. That's what happens when you suppress it. Releasing grief can take various forms, such as yoga, meditation, Reiki, somatic work, acupuncture, running, walking, and dancing. Please listen to your body. And number 5, become a grief cycle breaker. Join me today. Be accountable to your own healing. Don't transfer grief to the next generation. Let's transform pain into power. By my late 20s, I already went through the first 3 steps that I shared with all of you. However, grief still showed up as pain, tension, tightness, and stomach issues in my body. It wasn't until my best friend brought me to a Reiki circle when I was 28 where I discovered how this ancient Japanese palm healing technique could help me release grief. Reiki is an energetic massage that gets the energy to flow freely throughout your body. The moment that I stepped into the center of inner wisdom, I felt safe, supported, and seen. The teacher created a safe space for all of us. When I first experienced Reiki from her, I felt tingling and heat in my head, throat, heart, and stomach, places where the grief attached to as her hands hovered over these areas. The heaviness subsided. I felt lighter and peaceful. While Reiki was the right healing modality for me, it might not work for everyone. So take the time to find out what you need to move through grief. Reiki helped me confront deep-rooted feelings of abandonment and release that stored trauma from my body. It also helped me move through grief in a place where I was able to reclaim my Korean identity, return to the motherland, and start searching for my birth mother. The journey took me to Korea twice, 2014 and 2019. When I was adopted in 1984, it was at the height of the Korean adoption boom. According to an investigation by PBS Frontline and the Associated Press, around 200,000 Korean babies were sent to foreign countries over 7 decades. This documentary, South Korea's Adoption Reckoning, examined now confirmed allegations of adoption fraud and falsifications amid the West's high demand for babies. I was 30 when I first visited Korea. It was a solo 3-week trip. Although I wanted to find my birth mom, I was just grateful to connect with my ancestral land. I remember picking sweet potatoes in the countryside of Korea with a family friend and learning about the history of the Korean alphabet at the National Hangul Museum in Seoul. Although I came back with no new information about my birth parents, I learned more about my mom. My dad gave me a journal that my mom wrote for me from 1984 to 1987. She explained why she named me Heather after the flower, shared the steps towards finalizing my adoption and citizenship, and revealed her respect for my Korean culture. 5 years later, I returned to Korea with my husband. During our first full day, he proposed to me at a Buddhist temple on Bukhansan Mountain in Seoul. It was incredibly powerful and healing to revisit my birth country with him and show him places that I visited the first time. Sharing this journey towards reclaiming my identity brought us closer together. We searched for my birth mother with people I trusted at the National Center for the Rights of the Child and Global Overseas Adoptees Link. I ended up feeling betrayed because there was a mix-up on my birth mother. So I stopped searching, stuffed in my grief once again, and shifted my focus to planning my wedding. My husband and I tied the knot in 2021. 1 year later, I'm pregnant. I was 5 days past my due date when I gave birth. I remember lying on my back in the hospital bed in the final stage of labor, which is pushing, without an epidural. A rotation of different doctors entered the room with urgency as my son's heart rate kept going up and down on the monitor. My OB tells me, you're going to have an emergency C-section if you pass the 3-hour mark. That was not in my birth plan. I turned to my spiritual practice. My mind and body aligned in one goal, a safe and healthy delivery for my son and I. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and prayed to my late maternal ones, my mom, mother-in-law, and grandmother to give me the strength and push and get him out safely. It worked. After a couple pushes, he came out screaming. My OB placed him on my chest, and we were united after 9 months. This is my first ever blood relative, and I'm a mom because of him. 2 days later, we left the hospital We returned to our home as a family of 3. My husband and I tried our best to understand our son's needs and cries as we got used to a new world without any sleep, and as the losses of both of our moms crept back in. I acknowledged this grief by communicating it in texts and phone calls with my mom friends who were also motherless. I created this community. I also processed the return of the mother wound, which is abandonment and adoption, and weekly therapy. I refused to pass generational grief to my son. 1 month later, I turned 39. I had been dreading this birthday since this was the same age that my mom was when she died. But my son's grand entrance had healed me. I am forever grateful to be his Oma. For his first birthday, my husband and I threw him Aldochanchi, which is the first Korean birthday celebration. In the past, it was really important due to high infant mortality rates from diseases and starvation in Korea. It symbolizes a long and prosperous life for a baby. I learned that my mom threw Aldochanchi for me from her journal. I was wholeheartedly loved, seen, and supported by my mom, and I'm doing the same for my son. For his Dochanchi, we performed the Jojabi, which is a Korean tradition that predicts a child's career. We set up 9 objects on a blue cloth from different occupations. He crawled right up to the pencil and picked it up. He is following in mommy and daddy's footsteps. I recapped his first birthday in a journal that I started for him when he was 4 months old, the same age I was when I was adopted. My mom kept a similar journal for me. When I write, I am connected to my mom. When I write, I am connected to my son. When I write, I heal. This has been a common thread throughout my entire existence. I promise to do everything in my son's journal that my mom did for me. From documenting my temper tantrums, to my developmental milestones, to declaring her unconditional love for me. According to her entries, I was happy, playful, social, and curious. Her grandson shares these same qualities. This writing practice is healing and shows my steadfast commitment to remembering my mom with love and joy instead of pain. My grief is my own to hold, not my son's, and I refuse to pass it to him. And I am ready to restart the search for my birth mother. Jonin 어머님 울 양소합니다. Jonin 어머님 울 사랑합니다. Jonin 어머님 울 가져가겠습니다. Thank you.